Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is CallAnnie Softwarewala and I'm a level 1 student at Rehan School, Islamabad campus. So, viewers, today I'm here with a new Maya. So, our today's Maya topic for you is why are plants called the lungs of Earth? Ask for feedback and take a score out of 10. So, let's start our today's Maya. So, let's start. Wait for few minutes, Maya didn't responding. Okay, so call the Maya.
Hey,
Okay, so Maya, my first question from you is why are plants called the lungs of the earth? So please give me a very interesting answer on this topic. So let's start your answer, Maya.
hey there. That's a fantastic question. So, plants being called the lungs of the earth is this really beautiful analogy about how they work with us, and honestly, it's pretty spot on. Um, Here's the deal. You know how we breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide? Plants do the opposite. They take in carbon dioxide from the air, which is like their food, and they breathe out oxygen as a waste product. It's this whole process called photosynthesis. The Earth's atmosphere is constantly trying to balance CO2 and oxygen, and plants are doing this constant work of replenishing our supply of oxygen while removing CO2, which is why they've earned this lungs of the earth title. Without them, the air we need to survive would get out of whack pretty quickly. They're basically doing the work of keeping our atmosphere breathable. What do you think? Does that make sense?
Okay, so Maya,
I
my
see you're
next
thinking about
question
it.
from you is
What?
what does the phrase lungs of the earth mean? So please give me a very interesting answer and fully long answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answers. Let's start.
You're right to dig deeper into that phrase. It's actually more than just the oxygen part we talked about. Lungs of the earth is really about a complete cycle of air purification and maintaining balance. Here's a full breakdown. First, think about what lungs actually do in your body. They're not just about oxygen and carbon dioxide out. They're constantly working to filter out impurities and keep everything clean. Plants act like that for the planet on a huge scale. They take in tons of carbon dioxide, way more than just what we humans exhale. This CO2 comes from burning fossil fuels, deforestation, industrial processes, all sorts of things that mess with the atmosphere. Plants lock that carbon into their roots, trunks, leaves, basically turning it into plant material and storing it away. So not only are they giving us oxygen, but they're acting like natural carbon storage, which helps slow down climate change by reducing CO2 in the atmosphere. Then there's their water cycle impact. Plants release water vapor through their leaves in a process called transpiration, and that moisture helps create clouds and regulate rainfall patterns. Plus, they improve air quality by filtering pollutants out of the air, acting like natural air filters in cities and forests. So when people say lungs of the earth, they're really talking about all this happening at once. They're not just producing oxygen, they're keeping the whole system healthy and balanced. That makes them totally essential for life on Earth, doesn't it?
Okay,
Taking our time with that
so Maya, my next
sounds like a
question
lot to
from you is
process.
how do plants help us breathe? So please give me a very interesting answer and fully long answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answers. Let's start your answer, Maya.
Got it. Okay. So, We've talked about how plants help keep the air breathable, but let's really dive into the specifics of how that process actually makes it possible for us to breathe. Here's the connection. You know how we need oxygen to survive and release carbon dioxide as we breathe? Well, photosynthesis is this incredible process where plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to create their own food. Sugar, basically. And the cool thing is, oxygen is created as a byproduct of making that sugar. They pull the carbon dioxide out of the air, use what they need to make their food, and release the oxygen back for us to breathe. Without plants making this oxygen supply, there would be much less oxygen in our atmosphere, and we wouldn't be able to breathe. It's a direct relationship. Plants provide the oxygen we need to live through this natural cycle. But here's where it gets even cooler. The oxygen we breathe also helps build and maintain all the tissues in our bodies. So it's not just that plants give us air, they help maintain the entire biological processes in our bodies that allow us to live. So plants don't just help us breathe, they make breathing possible in the first place.
Okay, so Maya, my next question from you is how do
Taking
plants no what gas do plants take in from the air? So please give me a very interesting answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answers. Let's start your answer, Maya.
That's a really smart question. How do they know? It's not like they have noses or brains telling them, take in CO2. It comes down to tiny structures called stomata. Stomata are these microscopic pores on the surface of leaves and stems, and they're essentially the plant's breathing holes. They contain guard cells, which act kind of like valves. These guard cells respond to CO2 concentrations and changes in light. When it's light and there's a lot of CO2 around, the guard cells open, letting CO2 rush in for photosynthesis. When it gets dark, the guard cells close, conserving water and slowing down gas exchange. Plants absorb CO2 from surrounding air and transport this gas via tiny structures within their leaves directly to cells, where photosynthesis occurs, releasing oxygen in the process as a direct result of carbon fixation. They don't choose what to take. They react to what's available. Sunlight triggers that whole process, so the more light, the more the stomata open and CO2 gets sucked in. Simple as that.
So Maya, my next question from you is what gas do plants release into the air? So please give me a very interesting answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answer. So let's start your answer, Maya. ठीक है.
Got it. Let's dive into the gases plants release. Most people only think about oxygen, which of course is huge. Plants release oxygen during photosynthesis, like we discussed. But here's where it gets interesting. They release other gases too. One important one is water vapor. This process is called transpiration, where plants release water from their leaves to help with cooling and nutrient transport. Plants also release things like VOCs, volatile organic compounds, basically, different smells when leaves break down. These gases influence how other plants or animals interact with them. Plants also release ethylene, a plant hormone that affects ripening. Plants also release small amounts of methane when they break down organic material, but it's not considered significant compared to oxygen and CO2 impact. So it's not just oxygen, it's more of a whole mix. Did you know some plants even release chemicals that attract pollinators or act as defense mechanisms against insects? They're releasing a whole cocktail of stuff into the air, not just oxygen. Just taking it all in, huh? Take your time.
So Maya, my next question from you is what is photosynthesis? So please give me a very interesting answer on this topic and very long answers. Let's start the answer, Maya.
Okay, let's really unpack photosynthesis because it's the heart of everything we've been talking about. It's this incredibly elegant process where plants basically turn sunlight into food. Here's the breakdown. First, plants take in carbon dioxide from the air through those stomata we talked about, and they absorb water through their roots. Inside plant cells, specifically in structures called chloroplasts, there's this green pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll acts like a solar panel, trapping energy from sunlight. This sunlight energy powers a bunch of complex chemical reactions. First stage is light-dependent reactions, where water molecules break down, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. That's the oxygen we breathe. The energy harvested from water and light starts the second stage, the Calvin cycle, using energy to turn carbon dioxide and water into glucose, basically sugar. This glucose becomes the plant's food source. The whole process has a chemical equation that looks like this: 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus light energy, C6H12O6 plus 6O2. But here's the wild part. Photosynthesis isn't just about making food. The glucose provides plants with energy to grow, repair tissues, make more cells. This process is also the foundation of almost all food chains on Earth. All organisms rely on plants as a direct or indirect food source that trace back to plants making food from the sun. And here's the biggest takeaway. Photosynthesis captures carbon from the atmosphere and makes organic compounds. So without photosynthesis, we wouldn't have fossil fuels because there was no way to take carbon out of the atmosphere and turn it into stuff that could eventually become coal, oil, and natural gas. Photosynthesis is truly the engine that powers almost all life on Earth. Pretty incredible when you break it all down. That was a long one. Makes sense?
So, Maya, my next question from you is why is photosynthesis important for life? So, please give me very interesting answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answers. Let's start your answer, Maya.
Hey there, happy to connect. Photosynthesis back to why it matters for life. So, remember all that glucose plants are making during photosynthesis? That's the base of almost every food chain. Basically, plants use that glucose to grow and create all parts of their bodies. Then herbivores eat those plants and get energy from that glucose, like cows grazing on grass. Then carnivores eat those herbivores, lions hunting zebras, and they're getting the energy that originally came from the sun and was stored in the plants. So photosynthesis is literally powering everything that eats. But that's not all. Photosynthesis gives off oxygen, right? The oxygen is what we humans and animals need to breathe and survive, keeping our cells functioning and giving us the energy to move and think. Without that oxygen, there's no life as we know it. But here's another aspect. Photosynthesis takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide builds up from breathing and industrial stuff, and too much messes with the Earth's climate, making global warming worse. Plants are basically cleaning up our air and keeping things balanced. They stabilize CO2 levels, regulate climate, and maintain a livable planet. So photosynthesis doesn't just feed life. It creates the environment where life can exist in the first place.
So, Maya, my next question from you
Gotcha.
is
Lots to
my
think
next
about with that
question
one.
from you is Maya. How do leaves help in photosynthesis? So please give me very interesting answer on this topic and for long answers. Let's start your answer, Maya.
Good question. Let's talk about leaves and photosynthesis. Leaves are basically photosynthesis factories. They're perfectly designed for the job. Here's how they contribute. First off, leaves are flat and broad, which helps them capture as much sunlight as possible. Think about it. A wider surface means more sunlight hitting the plant cells. Secondly, the outer layer of the leaf has a clear coating called the cuticle. This lets light penetrate through and protects the insides from drying out. Underneath that cuticle, there are layers of cells packed with chloroplasts, those structures with chlorophyll we talked about. It's where all the magic happens. Each leaf cell contains many tiny pores called stomata. They're like tiny holes that open and close to let CO2 in and oxygen out during photosynthesis. But they also release water. It's a whole give and take relationship. The leaves also have a network of veins which transport water to leaf cells and move glucose away from them. It's a delivery and removal system for all the materials they need for photosynthesis. Leaves also have a special arrangement called a palisade mesophyll. That's just fancy language for columns of cells under the surface with a ton of chloroplasts, maximizing light capture for photosynthesis. So it's really a perfect design, structure, protection, gas exchange, and transportation, all engineered around capturing the most light to do its photosynthesis work. Still processing? No rush.
Okay, so Maya, my next question from you is, uh,
Just checking in. Are you
Maya,
still there?
hello, tell me, what role does sunlight play in play in plant life? So please give me an interesting answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answer. So let's start your answer, Maya. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answer.
Okay, let's dive into cyanide in plants. This is a surprising one because most people think of cyanide as a poison, which it is. But it turns out plants play some fascinating roles with it. Here's the breakdown. Some plants naturally produce cyanogenic glycosides. That's the family of compounds that, when broken down, release hydrogen cyanide. The interesting thing is, like, they don't make free cyanide directly. These chemicals are kept in separate compartments inside plant cells so they can't harm the plant. Plants often use cyanogenic glycosides as a defense mechanism against herbivores or even insects. When plant tissue is damaged, like when an animal bites it, the enzyme mixes with the compound, releasing hydrogen cyanide, acting like natural protection by disrupting their cells. Cassava and almonds are examples. They contain these compounds, so need processing to make safe. But here's where it gets even wilder. Some plants actually benefit from small doses. They might use cyanide release to act like a signaling molecule between cells, or even for plant protection from certain pathogens or microbes. Not all plants make these compounds. Ones that live in regions with heavy grazing have it much more frequently. The amount of cyanide varies widely. Small amounts are completely harmless, but bigger amounts lead to serious reactions. So plants don't usually want to kill herbivores. They just want to disrupt digestive processes or make the plant less appetizing. A lot of plant chemists are studying this to see how to use it in medicine too. That was pretty complex. Does that help clarify it? Taking your time? No worries.
Okay, So, ma'am, my next question from you is, what role does sunlight play in plant life? So, why are green plants especially important? So, please give me very interesting and fully long answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answers. Let's start your answer, Maya.
Absolutely. Sunlight is the fundamental ingredient of plant life. There is no plant life as we know it without the sun. Here's how it works and why green plants especially matter. Think back to photosynthesis. Sunlight provides the energy that fuels that entire process. The chlorophyll inside plant cells, that green pigment, actually captures light energy and converts it into chemical energy, creating glucose. Without sunlight, that reaction doesn't happen. But it's not just energy. Plants respond to sunlight in all sorts of ways. They turn their leaves towards the light, maximizing exposure. They open their stomata during the day to take in CO2. Plant hormones change direction based on light exposure. Seasonal light changes tell plants when to grow or bloom. So here's why. Green plants are especially important. They contain the pigment chlorophyll, which is really good at absorbing the red and blue parts of the light spectrum. Green light, the color you see, reflects off the leaves. So that's what we perceive. These plants are the main photosynthetic engines on Earth. Because of that chlorophyll, they produce the majority of oxygen and the bulk of food for every animal alive. Some plants have different colors, but that usually means less overall sunlight capture ability. So, green plants have evolved to be master sunlight harvesters, turning the sun's energy into life as we know it. There are other wavelengths plants absorb, but chlorophyll in green plants is perfect for most light exposures. They literally turn solar energy into food and sustain nearly all ecological life. Take your
Okay.
time with that one. It's a lot to
So,
process.
my next question from you is, how do forests help can clean the air? So, please give me very interesting answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answer. So, let's start the answer, Maya.
Okay, let's talk forests and their cleaning power. It's pretty impressive when you think about it. Trees in forests are actually massive air purifiers. Like we've already talked about, trees absorb carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. So they're pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere, which reduces greenhouse gases that cause climate change. That's huge for keeping our planet healthy. But here's what people might not realize. Forests also filter pollutants from the air, like dust, smoke, and chemicals. Leaves intercept those particles from the atmosphere and they trap those tiny pollutants instead of letting them reach ground level or getting into our lungs. Healthy forests also help regulate water cycles. Trees capture rainfall and release clean water through transpiration, preventing erosion and keeping watersheds balanced. When rain hits the ground in healthy forests, there's more absorption and less water that causes runoff or pollution. Tree roots also hold soil in
Okay.
place. This prevents soil erosion, keeping waterways clear. Forests play a role in cleaning up contaminated soil. Some trees can absorb toxins and heavy metals, helping to remove them. Plants also release oxygen, restoring the air and improving air quality. In short, healthy forest ecosystems are acting as this natural combination filtration system that contributes toward clean water, clean air, better soil health, and balanced climates. They have natural capacity that cleans entire Earth areas. What do you think? Pretty remarkable system? Taking that in?
Okay. So, Maya, my next question from you is, why is the Amazon rainforest called the lungs of Earth? So, please give me very interesting answer on this topic. I'm waiting for your long and interesting answers. Let's start to answer, Maya.
That's a great question. And the nickname is quite fitting. The Amazon rainforest earned the nickname Lungs of Earth because of the sheer scale of what it does. The Amazon produces a huge amount of the Earth's oxygen. Estimates range from around 6% to as much as 20%, depending on measurements, while pulling out massive amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere through the photosynthesis process. Now let's talk about scale. The Amazon isn't just a big forest, it's the biggest rainforest on Earth, spanning 9 countries. That area is doing a lot. That's roughly the size of the continental United States when it comes to coverage, and it contributes hugely to oxygen production. But here's where it gets more complicated. While there are debates around whether the Amazon rainforest actually produces more oxygen than it consumes, it is undeniably an incredible carbon sink. The trees and vegetation store massive amounts of carbon. Deforestation releases those CO2 stores back into atmosphere, making the Amazon vital in that way. This means less CO2 is free to mess up the atmospheric balance and warm up our...
Okay, so viewers, this was of Maya. I hope you like it. I meet you with the new Maya next topic. Like, kind of laugh is